Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back, guys, to another episode of our podcast, Deen Thoughts. Today we've got two special hosts. We're joined with Farah for another episode. And today's going to be an interesting one. I think we actually did something similar, like a similar topic. We never ended up finishing it, but I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. So I'm going to hand it over to Farah so she can open up for us, inshallah.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So, I kind of wanted to start off with these two ayahs from Surah Al-Infitar. And it's the two ayahs, إِنَّ الْأَبْرَارَ لَفِي نَعِيمٍ وَإِنَّ الْفُجَّارَ لَفِي جَحِيمٍ. So Ibn al-Qayyim comments on these two ayahs, and he says, don't think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's statement, surely the righteous will be in bliss, and the wicked will be in the state of fire, does not limit to the akhirah. It is for the believer's three homes. So we know that the three homes for a believer is the dunya, the grave, and the akhirah. So today we just want to go over what does it mean to be in a state of na'im and what does it mean to be in a state of jahim, in the dunya, in the grave, and in the hereafter.
And this is something that's like very important for us to know because naturally it's inevitable, right? Like it says a lot, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks a lot about the hereafter in the Quran, and it's actually one of the pillars of Iman, to believe in the day of judgment. And essentially the life that's going to come hereafter. And the companions, like in the Quran it says that on the day of judgment when people are going to come and they're going to see what's going to happen, they're going to say, Ya laytani qaddamtu li hayati. They're going to say, I wish I set something forth for my life. So essentially that tells us that the true life, the true hayat is not in this world. It's the hereafter. It's the day of judgment. It's your grave. It's whether you're in Jannah or Jahannam. Yani, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he tells us, be in this world as if you're a traveler. Like, you're just in a pit stop, and this is just our pit stop. So don't let this dunya kind of take you over and make you blinded for the hereafter. So we're going to take each one section by section, and we're going to start with what happens before our soul is about to depart, right? And when it departs. So taking it from the negative side first, from the jahim, from the disbelievers, and inshallah, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us all from the mu'mineen, the believers, the ones that have a righteous ending. But essentially, the way that you die tells a lot about what's to come next. So we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala right now, there's a ghishawa, like a blockage that's on our eyes. We're unable to see a lot of the matters of the unseen. And from that is the angels, the jinn, all of that. Seconds before you die, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lifts off this veil. And while we're talking through this, I want you guys to sit and imagine this is happening, because that's how it's really going to affect us. Imagine wherever you are. Maybe you're on your way to school. Maybe you're in a lecture and you're doing anything. And naturally, all of a sudden, the shield is lifted and you see two angels coming towards you. The way that these angels look and the smell that the angels come with tells the whole tale. Yani you know what's going to happen from that moment. If you are from the nafs al-khabitha, the evil soul, the angels will come with a shroud from the shrouds of Jahannam, from the hellfire. It will smell so bad, and the angels will look so scary. So for 2 or 3 seconds, Allahu a'lam how long, you're looking at these angels, and they come to you and they say, Ya ayyatuha nafsul khabitha, O wicked soul, come out to the punishment and the wrath of your Lord. And the scholars say that the process of the soul leaving the body for someone who's al-khabith, the wicked soul, it's like pulling cotton out of threads. Like, say you have cotton like on a stick, try to pull it out. It's so painful. Then the angels, they'll carry your soul in a shroud that smells so bad, and they'll go up to the heavens. And we know that every heaven has gatekeepers that are angels. The angels will say, who is this? And they'll call you by the worst names people used to call you in this dunya. Who is this wicked soul, the liar, the fornicator, the everything? And the angels will call you by the worst names that you were called as well. And they will prevent you from entering into Jannah. Even the first gate, you're not even allowed to go up. And some of the scholars say that the angels drop your soul and it just comes back. And it waits for your body to be buried for the soul to go into it. So that is from the nafs al-khabitha. Farah, you're going to talk about the positive side?
So on the exact opposite, when these two angels are in front of you, your soul is looking at them. Like, before you're about to die, you can see them. And they're just two beautiful angels, and they have the most beautiful smell. And when they come up to you, they come up to your head. So they're right by your head. And they're telling you, don't be scared and do not worry. Like, لا تخاف ولا تحزن. And they're saying, وَأَبْشِرُوا بِالْجَنَّةِ نَحْنُ أَوْلِيَاؤُكُمْ فِي الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ. So they're saying, we were your protectors in the dunya and we're going to be your protectors in the akhirah. So like you said, they take this kafan. I don't know what they call it in English.
Like a shroud.
Yeah, the shroud. They take it and they wrap you in it. And the smell of it is so beautiful. And as they're carrying you, all of the angels are carrying you, and the angels are asking, who is this? And instead of calling you by the wicked names, because you're a believer, they're calling you by your favorite nickname. Like, for example, like, my favorite nickname is Farah, so they'll call me Farah. Whatever nickname you love the most. And the angel of death will say, يا أيتها النفس الطيبة اخرجي. So it's like telling your soul, like, leave. And instead of your soul leaving like cotton, it's gonna leave as if it's like water falling from a cup. Yeah.
So these angels, right? They're gonna carry your soul where? To Jannah. Yeah. Just like we said, the negative soul, like not the negative, like the bad soul, it gets carried to the gates. When it gets to the gates, the gatekeepers will say, who is this? And they'll say, it's so-and-so. And they'll call you by the most beautiful names. Even not just like your favorite names, but what did people used to call you? Al-Mu'mina, the one who was always in salah, the one who was always in dua. And they will grant you entrance into that gate of Jannah. And so imagine your soul is just going to keep on rising until you reach the gate of Jannah, that level of Jannah that you'll actually be in. SubhanAllah.
And then for the righteous believer, when they reach like the final gate, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will actually say, put my servants' good deeds like fi'aliyin. So it's like imagine like, you know those like sports posters? It's all of your good deeds just hanging up in Jannah. Yeah. And so after that, the soul is taken back down to the body. And instead of it being like a harsh like going down, it's like your soul is just placed on top of your body until the funeral. And this is actually like such an interesting part. There's actually like an etiquette to carrying a body in a funeral. So the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, like, don't walk slowly and don't run. Just like kind of go in like a brisk walk. And the reason for that is because the good soul is so excited. Like they're so excited. Like they know they're going to Jannah. They want to be buried. They want to be resurrected. But the companions are asking the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, like, what about someone who is bad? Like why would we rush to bury them? And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ actually says, so you can rest your shoulders from them.
SubhanAllah.
Yeah.
I never knew that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So essentially when you die, it's Ya ayyatuha nafsul khabitha, come out to the anger and the punishment of your Lord, or Ya ayyatuha nafsul mutma'inna, irji'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiyah. Imagine angels are telling you, come out to your Lord, radiyatan mardiyah. You're going to be pleased. You're going to be happy with what's to come next, subhanAllah.
Yeah.
Then comes the grave. And there was a companion, actually, I forget his name, but whenever the grave was mentioned, he used to weep. But when Jannah and Jahannam, when the hellfire and heaven were mentioned, he never used to cry that much. And they asked him, why do you weep so much? And he said, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said that أول منزلكم, like the first home for you on the Day of Judgment, will be your graves. If it's good, everything after it will come good. And if it's bad, everything after it will come bad. So naturally, when you have been buried, before the people leave, because from the etiquettes of burying the body, is that usually there's some sort of reminder that's given to the people who come and attend the funeral. You can hear every single word that they're saying. And by the way, even they say when you're washing the dead body, you should use like water that is not too cold, not too hot. You should be gentle because your body still feels everything. Mm-hmm. They place you in that grave and you hear the last footsteps that leave. So naturally, if you're a good soul, you're going to be excited because you're excited for what's to come next. But if you're from an-nafsul khabitha, you don't want that last person to leave. Because right away, we know that the two angels, Munkar wa Nakir, are the two angels that will sit you up and they will ask you these questions. But before that, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he said, every single person, when they are placed into their grave, they will be squished and like the grave will kind of squish you. And that squish is going to look different if you're a believer and if you're a disbeliever. If you're a disbeliever, that squish is going to be so painful and so hard that your ribs will overlap on each other. And these two angels will sit you up, Munkar and Nakir, and they will ask you the three questions. Man Rabbuk, Man Dinuk, Man Kitabuk. Even like who is this prophet? What is your book? Who is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What is your religion? Who is this prophet that came towards you? And the scholars say, even if you know the answers now, right? You can tell me your book is the Quran and your prophet is the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If you didn't live by them, when you're in the grave, your lips will be sealed and you won't be able to say a thing. And every single time you get it wrong, they will punish you. And when they leave, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will show you your spot in Jannah that you had. Because we believe every person has a spot in Jannah and Jahannam. Whichever one you don't take, other people will inherit. He'll show you your spot in Jannah. That's what you could have had. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will close it. And while you're in your grave, you will have a constant window to your punishment and your place in Jahannam. And your grave will become a pit from the pits of hellfire. And a man who smells so bad and looks so scary will come and sit with you until the day of judgment. And out of the torture and the pain that people in the grave are feeling, they will say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make the hour come. Because they want to be freed from this punishment. And they don't understand, like, the punishment that's to come after is even worse. And that's why, by the way, they say, like, animals, if you take them to the graveyard, they start to act weird. Because they hear what we don't hear. They hear the screaming and the punishment. And this is aside from all of the specific actions that have punishments in the grave. Like backbiting. Let's just talk about one, for example. Because this is, للأسف, like, backbiting is such a common sin. And it's from the kaba'ir. It's from the big that we don't really pay attention to. Your punishment for backbiting, in the grave alone, there's an angel whose sole purpose, they take a metal claw. And they claw your mouth all the way to the back of your head, and then your nose all the way to the back of your head, and your eye all the way to the back of your head. By the time one side has been fully pushed back, they go to the other one. By the time that's done, your face is returned, and it's just a constant punishment and a punishment and a punishment in the grave. That's just for backbiting, and there's so many different punishments for so many different things. So this is the first manzil. Let's talk about the positive.
So the blessings of the grave, there's a couple of them, and they're all just so amazing. But the first one is thabat, which is like, it comes when the questions are coming. So when the 3 questions come, you're able to answer them swiftly. Like, who is your Lord, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Who is your Prophet, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And all of the questions, you're just, because you lived by them, you're able to answer them perfectly. And the second blessing of the grave is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will order the grave of the believer to be furnished from furniture of Jannah. So it's like you can't even imagine it. Like the way we look at a grave now, it's like just a small little box, and we look at it and we're scared of it. But a believer, they're furnished with furniture of Jannah. They're clothed with clothes of Jannah. And like you mentioned before, the man that comes and he smells so bad. For the believer, it's a man who comes and his face is so beautiful. He's dressed beautifully. He smells beautifully. And this man, he said, when you ask him who he is, he says he's your good deeds. So every good action that you did, he'll be like, I'm when you helped your parents. I'm when you read Quran. I'm when you did Qiyam al-Layl. I'm all your fast during Ramadan. Every good deed that you did, that's what the man is. And he's like a friend for you in your grave. And like you mentioned before, when you're looking at your position in Jahannam, it's the opposite for a believer. It's just a constant window of Jannah for them. And they're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they're asking Him to bring the hour closer because they're just so excited. Whereas for the non-believer, they're so scared of what's happening in the grave that they want the hour to come closer, not knowing what's coming. And I think Adam mentioned this in the last episode, but I think about it constantly, is people who are always saying like, oh, every believer is going to go to Jannah, but when Jahannam blows a cold breath, it's like, even that is so scary. But
you know, also another thing, going back to the squeeze, right? Mm-hmm. If you're a believer, that squeeze kind of feels like a really tight hug. Yeah. I mean, it's a little discomforting, but it's not harmful. Mm-hmm. Imagine you're shown your place in Jahannam, and then that's what you would have had. But because you are from the believers, your constant looking is at your place in the paradise. And imagine right now, like you said, all the struggles that you're going through, you're building that person, that one that's going to give you company. Your salah will come and protect you. Your Quran will make your grave be filled with light. Your psalm, everything will come and literally sit and keep you company. Yeah. And imagine the people that passed away years ago, thousands of years ago. And they're in constant punishment until the day of judgment. We don't know when we're going to die, and we don't know the state of our deeds when we are going to die. And there's a scary ayah actually that says like وَتَزِلُّ قَدَمٌ بَعْدَ ثُبُوتِهَا, that the feet will move or become shaky after it was firm. يعني we don't know our state now, and we don't know our state when we die. And that's why it's so important for us when we hear this and we get scared, not to think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala isn't merciful, but it should. And by the way, the scholars say that there's a rahmah in Allah's punishment, and there was a whole episode about this, and I think it was like titled "The Mercy of the Rahman, the Most Merciful," or the punishment of the Most Merciful. It's to understand that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you, it's so that you can prepare yourself to not fall into that. Subhanallah. Saha.
Sorry, I
It's
was
okay.
really choking.
Jannah, or the hereafter, the day of judgment, the day of resurrection, Yawm al-Hashr. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells us that this day is like 50,000 years long. And your state on this day is the same theme. So we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when the day of judgment has been established and everyone is, killed basically, or everyone is wiped off the earth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there will come a point where no one is alive but Allah. Even the angels, there's 4 angels that are left at the end. The one that blows like the trumpet, the angel of death, Jibreel, and one other angel, I can't remember. At the end, they're all dead. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, لِمَنِ الْمُلْكُ الْيَوْمِ, He says, to who belongs the kingdom today? He'll say, أَيْنَ الْمُتَكَبِّرِينَ أَيْنَ الْجَبَّارِينَ, where are those that were arrogant? Where are those that said they were the kings? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after this, everything, like it says in Surah Taha, وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْجِبَالِ فَقُلْ يَنْسِفُهَا رَبِّي نَسْفًا. They ask you about the mountains, say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will completely deteriorate them. All of the creation is wiped out. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings us on the day of Hashr to a plain that is flat. And everyone will be resurrected barefoot, naked, and even the men uncircumcised. And Aisha, she asked the Prophet Muhammad, she said, we're going to be naked on that day? Like she got scared that men would be looking at her. And the Prophet Muhammad told her that the state of that day is going to be so scary that no one's going to be looking at anyone else.
Yeah.
You're going to be worried about your state on that day. Go ahead.
We always talk about this in like our class, but I feel like it's so important to read Juz' Amma because there's like a common theme in it of the day of resurrection, the state of the believer and the state of the non-believer. And even when you're reading it, like you mentioned before, like you literally imagine yourself in it and you get so scared of the situation. And that's why we always emphasize like the 7 who are protected under the shade of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment.
Let's mention those.
Yeah. So one of them is the one who loves to go to the masjid. Two people who love each other for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Someone who grew up in the worship
someone
of
who grew
Allah
up in the worship of
subhanahu
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
A man or a woman who is called to like a relationship with the opposite gender, but they didn't.
They abstain from
Yeah. The one who gives sadaqah in his right hand doesn't know what his left hand.
Yeah.
What else? We said the 2 people
Who love each other for the sake of Allah.
the one who grew up in ibadah, the one called to fornication, the one who loves the masjid, whose heart is attached to the masjid, the one who remembers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, and he sheds tears out of the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And to understand why it's important to be from these 7 is when you understand the state of that day. The Prophet Muhammad says a hadith that the sun will be a mile, and the word is mil, like in Arabic, above your head. And the scholars actually differed upon like the tafsir of what that means. It can either be like a literal mile, like the distance, or mil also refers to the pen that they used to use for eyeliner. You know how small that pen is?
Yeah.
Like this, like it's barely even like a finger long. Imagine the sun that close above you.
Yeah.
Okay? Right now, by the way, if the sun was an inch closer to us, and look at how far it is, the whole earth would blow up. Like that's how hot the sun is. An inch above your head. I'm sorry, I do not know how to turn off those notifications. They're so annoying. An inch above your head, and people will be sweating based on their state. If you are from the believers, your sweat might reach like your ankles. But if you're someone who's from the nafs al-khabitha, like the wicked soul, you will be sweating so much that you're drowning in your own sweat. So we want to be from those who are under the shade of Allah. when there's no shade but his shade. Imagine you're literally standing and you're looking above you and it's the shade of Allah, the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that means something. You're not going to get that shade, inshallah, unless you're from a nafs al-mutma'inna. Like, you have a good standing on that day.
Yeah.
And what about the fact that there's a companion, he came to the Prophet and he told him, Ya Rasulullah, like, I'm able to sit with you now, but I'm scared that on the day of judgment, you're going to be so far, or even in Jannah. And he said, يُحْشَرُ الْمَرْءُ مَعَ مَنْ يُحِبُّ. Just sit and ponder over that for a second. Like, let's say, for example, your favorite companion is, like, Abu Ubaidah, right? Or, like, for me, it's more like I really resonate with, like, the wives of the Prophet, like Khadija, Fatima, Aisha. Imagine you're standing with them on the day of judgment just because of the love that you had for them. And when you're standing with them, your state would be like them. Like, you're not going to be standing to a disbeliever and you're not sharing a section of that punishment. The same way, you're not going to be standing next to a believer except that you're sharing a part of that rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that can be more than just what your deeds did, but out of the love. And when you truly love them, imagine standing next to them. That's just crazy to me.
And then we know, like, when we're handed our books, when you're handed it and you're right, like,
you know, actually, the people who are handing their books in their left, you know what happens? So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings Jahannam, because on that day, like, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he brings Jahannam, and Jahannam is a beast. It's not like a place like we think it is. It's a creature. And Jahannam would be carried by, it has 7 strings. And on each string, there's 70,000 angels. So I think in the end, it's like 4.9 million angels carrying Jahannam. Imagine. Out of how angry it is when it sees those who are destined for the punishment of Allah, Jahannam, like, roars. It lets out a scream that scares every living person. Even the Anbiya would fall shaken on that day. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he talks about the state of the disbelievers, when they're coming to attain their books, the believers know, I'm going to get my book in my right hand, because everything before that, inshallah, will entail to that. So they're going to be happy, and they're going to say, Ha muqra'u kitabiya. They're going to say, come and read my book, look at what I did, because they're so happy. The disbelievers, they'll put their hands behind their back, thinking that if my hand's not there, it's not going to come to my left hand. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will, like, bend them in a way that they're still grab their book. And they will say, Ya laytani, like, lam uta kitabiya. I wish I didn't obtain my book. And even in Surah I forget if it's Surah Al-Ma'arij, but it'll say يَوْمَ يُكْشَفُ عَنْ سَاقٍ وَيُدْعَوْنَ إِلَى السُّجُودِ فَلَا يَسْتَطِيعُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says on that day, and in a way that we don't know, it befits Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's majesty, and this is from, like, ilm al-ghayb, we don't really know it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will show part of his leg. Saq means, like, your knee. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will show part of it, and out of the like, how azim it is, everyone will fall into prostration, except for النفس الخبيثة. يوم يكشف عن ساق ويدعون إلى السجود فلا يستطيعون. What does that mean, لا يستطيعون? You literally cannot. So if you didn't pray in this world, you're not going to be able to fall in prostration in the next.
Yeah.
SubhanAllah.
I think if we're, like, going into the akhirah, I wanted to mention in Surah Al-A'raf, like, the conversation that happens between, like, the believers and the non-believers.
Go for it.
So we always talk about it, like, in the, like, sometimes the believers feel so humiliated in the dunya, but you have to remind yourself what it's going to be like in the akhirah. So, for example, like, one of the things that the believers will say to the non-believers is, we got what we deserved. Did you get what you deserved? And the non-believers who are in Jahannam, they'll be like, yeah, we got what we deserved. And at one point, the non-believers are going to be like, can you bring down some of the water that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed you with? And the believers will say no. And, like, in another surah, I forgot which one it is, I think it's Mutaffifin, but the believers are going to look down at the non-believers, and they're going to be on, like, canopies. And it's like a feeling of, like, basically, like, entitlement, which is, like, deserved. Like, we deserve to feel that entitlement. Like, everything that, for example, like, we see what's happening in Palestine between the Yahud and the Muslimin. It's like they're oppressing them so bad, but on that day, the non-believers are going to look up at the believers and just feel so embarrassed by what they did and so embarrassed by their state.
like يوم تبلى السرائر. On that day, all the secrets are going to become unknown.
Yeah.
Nothing is going to hide. And even يعني when you look at the sirat, right? How scary is that?
Yeah.
The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for the believers, is standing on the end and saying, Rabbi sallim, Rabbi sallim, Rabbi sallim. Ya Allah, like, allow them to pass. Imagine you're walking over the sirat and Jahannam yani, is literally under you. And some of the companions used to like cry for hours over the verse in Surah Maryam that says, وَإِن مِّنكُمْ إِلَّا وَارِدُهَا. There's none of you except that you're going to pass over Jahannam. Whether you're a believer and you're going to the highest ranks of Jannah, you're still passing over Jahannam. And that beast is scary. And that sirat is scary. And your Prophet is standing on the opposite side telling you to make a dua for you to pass it. Then what about the state of the disbelievers?
Yeah.
On that day, on that humiliation, like you said, that's the biggest thing, is like the humiliation that the people of Jahannam are going to face, and the honoring that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will do for the people of Jannah.
And imagine how we feel, like, for example, like looking at the companions, they used to cry over this verse, and they were the best of this ummah. Like, how are we supposed to feel when we hear this verse? Like, we should be so scared.
Yeah. When we don't know the reality of it, we can't get scared of it, because we don't know what it means.
Yeah. That's why it's important when you're like, we mentioned this in the Ramadan episode, but when you're reading the Quran, to truly understand what it's saying and to imagine yourself in that position. Like, that just increases your khushu' so much.
And just subhanallah.
Yeah.
Or even like the entrance into Jannah.
Yeah.
And the entrance of people into Jahannam.
Just what the angels will say to the believers.
Subhanallah.
Like, they'll literally say, like, peace be upon you for what you endured. Or there's just so many, like, beautiful things that we can hear, inshallah.
Subhanallah. Just one more thing. When the judgment is done, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He talks in Surah Al-Zumar. He's saying how the people of Jahannam will be like, I don't want to say hurdled, but like they'll be like grouped together.
Yeah.
And wasiqu ila Jahannam zumara. They're going to be taken into Jahannam in groups. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you read the last two verses from Surah Al-Zumar, it talks about the difference between the ones that are going to Jannah and the ones that are going to Jahannam. The only difference is one letter actually. It's wa. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He talks about the people of Jahannam, He says, Futihat abwabu Jahannam. The gates of Jahannam are going to be opened, and the angels will ask them, and this is a reoccurring theme, you'll see this in all the surah. The angels will ask you, did you not get guidance? Did the messengers not come to you? And they will say, yes, but we disobeyed. And then they will say, then enter into Jahannam. And then what about the people of Jannah? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَفُتِحَتْ أَبْوَابُهُم. And the gates would be open. The only difference is wa. And I think it was Haifa Yunus, she was saying, this is wa of the people of Jannah. Yani the rahmah, it's not like futihat. When it says futihat, it's like very forceful, like they swung open. But for Jannah, it's wa futihat. It was like a very pleasant opening. And that's just one thing, how the gates are open. Then what about what you're going to get inside of those gates, subhanAllah? Or the fact that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala resurrects us on the Day of Judgment, we're not the same as when we're resurrected now. And that's one of the reasons why, subhanAllah, the best thing of Jannah, Yawm al-Mazid, right? The day where you get to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yeah.
In order to be able to comprehend that, the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala resurrects us is we're bigger, our minds are different, right? And from that, our skin is thicker. Yani, the scholars, they say your skin is 30 times thicker. So for the people of Jannah, 30 more times to endure the rahmah and the blessing of Allah. The people of Jahannam, 30 more time thickness to endure the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And every time your julud is burnt, your skin is burnt, بَدَّلْنَاهُمْ جُلُودًا غَيْرَهَا. We replace their skin again and again. So yani, subhanAllah, it's scary. It's crazy.
It's very scary. And like we mentioned before, in order to be so scared and to be prepared for it, you have to truly read the Quran and just imagine yourself in these moments.
What's one of the things you would say is you're looking forward to the most in Jannah? There's so many things in Jannah. Or like an ayah about Jannah.
I think the thing that like just makes me feel so emotional is like being resurrected with those who I love. Like the prophets, for example, the companions. And that's why like I think it's so important to learn about these people, especially the companions, and to learn to love them. Like, why would you not want to be resurrected with them? They were the best of people.
SubhanAllah. Yeah. Imagine sitting with like the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
I know.
And you're like, Rasul, tell me about everything.
I know.
Like,
SubhanAllah.
that's just crazy. Or like, I tell my mom this all the time, but a lot of times Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's plan, we don't understand it. But if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala were to show you, like, why it went down that way, and how it would have gone maybe the way that you wanted it, you would choose Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's plan every single time. So I think I would want to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like, play to me on the TV, like, decisions that really bothered me, and show me why that was the best thing for me. Because subhanAllah, like, the plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is just perfect. And you'll see that on the Day of Judgment.
And I talked about this before, but like we mentioned before, like, we don't know the reward of patience.
Yeah.
So I think that's another thing that I'm so excited about too, is like the things that I don't see the reward of now, whether it's patience or going through like a trial, like inshallah we're going to see that on the Day of Judgment, or we're going to see that in Jannah.
Yeah.
Which is like, it's such a comforting feeling, because you could be struggling with something so much now, but reminding yourself that it's okay, like, I'm going to see the reward of it, whether it's here or in Jannah, like, it's coming. So, yeah.
That's a really important point, because you're going to see that, I feel like, even, yani, you might not see it in your grave, Allahu A'lam, but like, that blessing that comes from being someone who's from, like, those who are patient. Like you said, Salamun alaykum bima sabartum. Like, glad tidings to you for like what you just imagine that. Also, just imagine sitting with the angels.
Yeah.
You know, actually there's a hadith that mentions that when you're sitting with the angels, we're gonna be telling them stories about this dunya, and the angels are so, like, quote unquote preserved, like they never had these like they don't even have the right, like they don't even have the capacity to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're gonna be like laughing over like simple stories that like happened to us in dunya, because they never got to experience. Like, that's just crazy. Or like all the creatures that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created just for Jannah, and the bounties of it. SubhanAllah.
And that's what's so special, is like, we have free will to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but we don't. And that's why it's like every good deed that we do and everything that we abstain from has more reward. Because, yeah.
No, هل جزاء الإحسان إلا الإحسان. Is the reward for goodness nothing but good. And I think just to end it off, yani, we did talk about both sides, and I think it's really important to understand the good and the bad. But on that day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, honestly, Surah Al-Zumar, everyone should read it. It's a beautiful surah. But at the end, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَقُضِيَ بَيْنَهُمْ بِالْحَقِّ وَقِيلَ الْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. That on that day, the qudiyah, like, we're going to judge between both of the groups, the good and the bad, right? وَقِيلَ الْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the scholars say, this isn't the people of Jannah, it's people of Jahannam. They're going to say, Alhamdulillah, because they're going to see how just the ruling of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. Imagine Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has 100 forms of mercy, and only one of them is in this world. That means all of the rahmah that you see, the rahmah that you give to people, that people give to you, that a mom gives to her child, any rahmah is only one fraction of the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves us more than ourselves. So imagine the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on that day, not just to the believers, but to the disbelievers. They had their chances, and when it's judged between both parties will be saying Alhamdulillah. It's just crazy.
Yeah, subhanAllah.
Anything else you want to mention?
No.
That's pretty much it. I think we'll end it there. Especially, like, you know, during this month, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's so important. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to say, when you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for Jannah, ask for Jannat al-Firdaus, the highest ranks in Jannah. Because none of us are going to be able to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the way that He deserves. None of us with our worship will attain Jannat al-Firdaus. Allahu A'lam. But it's when you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you beg Him and you tell Him how close you want to be to Him in Jannah, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make us from the people of Jannah, and will make us have a good ending that is firm upon La ilaha illallah. Those who the angels will say, Ya ayyatuha nafsul mutma'inna, not those who are from the khabitha. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will resurrect us with those who we love the most, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. We'll see you guys on the next one.